we met probably years and years ago, maybe first backstage at some mixed martial arts competitions, but we didn't really connect until after Damien and you became
Yes,
friends. And
that's right.
You coached him for a long time. And,
Yeah.
I mean, you've been around martial arts your entire life. You, and it was a family of martial arts too, which I mean I only really discovered over a few scotches.
Yeah.
You know, just the other night that you actually came from a family of catch wrestlers and boxers, and
Wrestlers, yeah.
you know, which is unique for Australians.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I have a fighting family.
Can you remember back how early it was that you started?
Oh, my grandfather sat me on his knee when I was 6 and said, "What do you want to do? Wrestle or box?" And there was no wrestling, small country town, but there was judo. And I did judo, and this was in the early 80s where it was all Bruce Lee and Kung Fu movies. And unfortunately, the judo school, no way I would have ever stopped, I don't think, but the judo school closed down. So the only other thing in town was Shotokan karate, so that's what I did, and I did it right up until, from age 7 or whatever, till, 22.
And you spent some time training Shotokan in Japan as well.
Yep, I trained at the top sports karate university in Japan, a place called Teikyo University. So it's known only for two things. You either got to be really rich to go there, or you got to be on a sports scholarship. So they've got gun rugby teams. Ryoko Tamura, the famous, they actually had a cartoon about it. Her nickname was Yawara-chan back when did I live there? The early to mid 90s. She was famous for winning the Olympic gold medal in judo still in high school. So she was there, and I wasn't doing judo at that stage. I was doing karate, but they were in the dojo beside us, and yeah, she was honoured. It was a big coup for them to recruit her.
And so that I mean, and obviously, for you, that's been a fairly extreme martial arts experience, coming from like a family of martial artists, then going to Japan and going to the source to one of the best Shotokan schools, and that really led to like a fairly impressive mixed martial arts career as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when people were just starting to figure out what this no rules stuff was, it was fairly high level martial arts, and which led you to Greg Jackson's.
Yeah,
you spent some time there. How was that?
Yeah, good. I had kind of, the sport wasn't as big as it is now, and I hadn't got a lot of fights. They kind of run out of fights. In those days, if you'd 1 or 2 or 3 on the trot, fights dried up. It's just the way it was. People didn't want to fight you. So I was having boxing fights, doing heaps of jiu-jitsu comps, wrestling comps, whatever I could to stay busy. And yeah, I fought one of Greg's guys who at the time, Joey's name is, at that time he was a gun. He was a King of the Cage champ when King of the Cage was a big organisation.
Yeah, I remember the guy.
And he was 18 and he'd won 18 fights in a row. And so my deck was stacked against me. Not making excuses, but I'm making excuses, and I got belted by him. But the silver lining in that was that I met Greg, and my trip to Greg was a collaboration between him, because they were in Australia for a week or so they come to Australia Zoo, and through myself met Steve Irwin, and so that, me going and fighting in the States all the time, Greg seen talent, that's his words, not mine, seen talent in me, and it was a collaboration between him and Steve Irwin. Steve financed my trips, and Greg, I lived with Greg when I'd go over there, and I'd train with him doing 2 and 3 a days, and that was a real turning point, both as a competitor and as a coach, was experiencing Jackson's. I was the first guy from out of town to ever be invited and to be accepted. And this is way before it blew up into the monster that it is now.
Which is, like in my opinion and the opinion of a lot of other people, it's made you a very skilled martial artist yourself, but a very skilled coach at the same time. So that extreme martial arts experience, what do you reckon the best values it gave you?
Directly in martial arts or in transferable life?
Maybe transferable to life. I'm probably more interested in that.
Because martial arts was never, these days, ironically these days, after 30 odd years on the mat, I'm probably the most relaxed in terms of making sure that martial arts is fun and accessible to everyone than I ever was. But for the most part of my career, it's been a very serious It hasn't been playing around. Like people say, oh, karate, this and that, but the karate I saw for a vast majority of my career was very, very aggressive. You needed to develop a lot of character. There was a lot of pain and suffering all the way through my school years. So almost through karate, missed in some respects my childhood. So and then of course everything jiu-jitsu and then MMA. So I've always been I've probably done 10 to 15 sessions a week since I was 12 years old. That's even now. So getting back to your question, I think the most important thing that martial arts has given me, and I take it into my job and all that sort of stuff, is average guys or people just don't have it. At least in my opinion, there's not a lot of people out there that show me, or I can see a demonstration or a capacity to endure suffering and hardship. I don't mean like life-ending suffering, but just the day-to-day grind. I handle calamities and shitty stuff, I think, better. I'm a better version of myself in that regard because of martial arts. That's probably the big one. The capacity to endure and to embrace the grind and to understand that to if you want to be successful at something, you've got to put in daily hours. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. And when you think about it, that started from 6 years old when you're on your grandfather's knee, that capacity to endure, which makes your experience, while it was longer, the capacity to endure probably increased.
Yes.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Every year, like you didn't. When
No,
you were
I
sitting on your
didn't.
grandfather's knee, you weren't made of
No.
steel and fire and
It was a
brimstone.
gradual thing.
Yeah.
I never really
It was
thought
a
about
gradual
it.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting to me, because I think, as I get older and other people get older, the most beautiful thing about martial arts, I think, is being able to take that weak person that comes in
100%.
and increase their capacity to endure.
100%.
And it may never be to the same level as me. Might never be to the same level as you. But it's interesting to me that the one thing that you love about it is the thing that I love seeing in the student the most.
Yes.
As well.
Me too. You see it. I got some mates of mine that work with me, and they're blue belts in that now. So they've been doing jiu-jitsu for, and they're just doing your 2 or 3. They're all like me, like you. They're all blokes with kids and mortgages, and they're not on the mat 6 days a week. They've got no aspirations to be killers, but they're on the mat 3 times a week, and they're better at their jobs. Even their wives are happier with them. Things that normally bother them don't anymore. And this is their feedback. I've noticed it in my work with them. I go, geez, he's just sharper and on the ball. He's someone who leads by example, and maybe not that long ago that wouldn't have been the case. And I put it down to martial arts.
100%. 100%. It's just such a powerful tool, and maybe even has something to do with allowing men to be manly again too. Not that it's not beneficial to women, but at the moment, we have this thing where men aren't allowed to be manly, but we can rock up somewhere and play fight with each other.
Absolutely.
And you know what? That feels good, and it feels good to be a man and do that.
Well, I'm a big believer. This may be somewhat controversial, but I think if society, it was more acceptable for men to have an outlet for their aggression, I think there'd be less violent crime. I really believe that men, whether they want to admit it or not, it's part of the genetic makeup of a man. We've got testosterone, and if it's not released, and it's not harnessed, and it's not appropriately distributed through appropriate activities, bad things can happen.
And it's emotional education too, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It's having a healthy, I've said this I think I've said this to you a few times, having a healthy relationship with violence doesn't make you a violent person at all. For me, it's like my son growing up, even my daughter for that matter, it's important that they have a healthy relationship with violence.
Yeah, and now you have kids, and you're kind of on a different path now where you can still coach some real high level guys, but you have all sorts of people training martial arts.
Yes, I do.
Now, what would be your advice to someone on how to find a good martial arts club?
You got to try before you buy, because it has, you know, you have to enjoy where you're going to be. It's not about necessarily going to the guy with the runs on the board at all. And I used to, in my more competitive younger days, I just assumed a lot more people would train with me because I had the runs on the board, and that's was immature and silly. So as an older guy who I like to think I've progressed as a human, I've realised that for the most part you've got to be comfortable, and that might take you a little while to realise that. And that's why I think people bounce around in gyms a fair bit initially.
Yeah, well, it's tough to know. Really,
Yeah, right.
Because if you've never done martial arts before, how do you know you're in a good place?
Yeah.
You know, like, so realistically, like, if you've never done martial arts before, my advice would be try a
before you
minimum
buy.
of 3 clubs
Yep.
for a whole week.
Yeah.
Even if you end up going back to the first one.
Yeah.
Because no one will care if they don't see you in a week or two.
No.
And a club with a good system is probably going to contact you
Yeah.
in the next week or two
Yeah.
with a follow-up anyway.
Yeah.
So take your time.
And I mean, there will always be those situations where you just got a bad feeling straight away, or it's just not your thing. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's, you take, like, my affiliate schools, I got 3 or 4, and each one of them, the instructors come together and train with me, but their individual gyms are completely different in their culture, and a lot of it's almost down to the music, almost like, you know, just so one of the boys plays heavy metal, and the other crew plays, the younger crew in another gym, like where Azza and the boys are, they play like this hip hop stuff, and the other boys at Fifth Wave play a lot of reggae. So with that comes, there's a different client base and a different culture, but all equally valid. And so, getting back to your question, advice-wise, make sure you're comfortable where you are, and then in terms of training, never is a truer thing said than choose consistency over intensity.
Yeah, 100%.
Whether that's strength training, you know, stretching, you know, you do an hour and a half yoga and then don't stretch it again for 2 weeks, that's kind of not ideal. You're better off doing 5 minutes every day, and you're better off just doing 15 minutes of jiu-jitsu 4 times a week than you are one 1 hour session.
Yeah,
and
5 minutes every day is good, and I tell that to my fighters too. Like, you sure go away for a week, but go for a run and do 3 minutes of shadow boxing at the end of your run.
Correct.
Even if you think you look like a goose, just go find a quiet spot down by the river at the end and do 3 threes of shadow. You know, so you're not completely out of touch with everything. Yeah,
and you got to, and in terms of once you've been in the game a while, particularly if we're talking straight jiu-jitsu here, because it's such a long process to get the black belt, if that becomes something you're going to look at doing, there's a few, if you're the type of guy that's, you know, people go, oh, that's a bit harsh, but if you're the sort of guy that puts jiu-jitsu last all the time because of your work, or your missus says you couldn't do it, or this or that, you're the guy who's not going to get their black belt. Unfortunately, it's a cruel mistress in that regard. You have to make time. And you don't have to make time 6 days a week, but you need that 2 to 3 1 hour sessions a week, or you're never going to get
Well, I actually think that's where the capacity to endure life comes into it.
100%.
Where it's like, you know what, you may have fought with your wife, but go to training and on the way home buy some flowers. But endure the fact that, you know, you're not going to fix that fight in the next 1 hour.
No. And it's only going to make you miserable.
Yeah, go train, then come back.
There's a certain amount.
Lose your job, train. Sad, train. Sick, train.
Jiu-jitsu's awesome, it's fun and all that, but there's still a certain amount of, you've got to, at least the way I think, you've got to earn the right to be good at jiu-jitsu. So you need at least daily at least thought of it. Like, you might be on the mat 2 or 3 times a week, but get on YouTube and have a look on those days you're not, after you've done your 5k run, or just give it a quick brief moment visualizing arm bars and triangles or whatever.
You've got to earn it, and that's interesting. Like, I love that word earn, because it's thrown around a little bit like, oh, you earned that, he earned that, you know, like, like people are waiting for something to be given to them all the time, but hey, you know, go out there and earn it. And if you don't know how to earn it, you need to have an honest conversation. Like, have the integrity to go ask your coach and go, Coach, what do you want me to do to earn this next bit? You go, mate, I actually just want you to keep doing what you're doing and show up. Here's the reason why, you know, like, at the moment. You know, there's no rush. You know, you've been on your blue belt for 1 year, you know, just chill out, young pup.
I mean, I'm fairly, My answer is nearly almost, unless there's a glaring issue, it's nearly almost just keep training it.
Yeah. And people get sick of it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Don't think about it. Don't think too. We got enough on our plate. In my opinion, the beautiful thing about martial arts is if you're doing daily practice or close to it, you don't have to think about it much. You know, a certain amount of thinking about it off the mat will help you martial arts, but once you get in here, it can, in some regards, in my opinion, it can get in your way. Just trust in the process and have a ball.
Yeah. I love, instead of asking, like, oh, what have I got to fix, like, I want to, I love rolling with a high-level guy and going, man, I cannot take your back. Every time I'm trying to take your back here, you're stopping me here, like, how are you doing that? And at least figuring out, like, that's where I'd rather delve into, like, why can't I get you with that thing, or how are you holding me down?
Yeah.
It's always super interesting.
Yeah, well, for me, anything positive in my character has been a direct, because it's been such a central focus of my life. It hasn't been just the last 10 years or the last 20. I'm 43 and it's been 34, 35 years of my life, so I don't really have any, I don't identify myself in any other way. That's not to say I don't have other things in my life. I don't have, I'm not just a martial artist, but it is definitely the primary driving force, and it will continue to be until I go belly up.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about it too. Like when your body gets broken, like you could still study war and fighting and everything and philosophy. So it is timeless in that way. I know it's been a big effect on you, but you've been able to watch it have a big effect on some other people as well. And I always find it interesting, again, because of the link between them and the recreational people. But what would be the one link that you would see amongst all the high-level international fighters that you train?
What makes them? It's a common link between all of them.
What's the common link between those guys?
Well, there's a few things. They can all, obviously, at that elite level, when you step across the line and it becomes your profession, they have that. We talked about it before. They have a supreme ability to endure suffering. That's the big one. They're usually intelligent, not necessarily has to be in a classical academic sense, but they're never dummies. I've never met an elite level, whether it's one I've trained directly, being their coach, or as a training partner overseas. They're always got a high degree of intellect. So intelligence is important. And then the cliche stuff is true, man. Humility, that's a big one. They need an ego, otherwise they won't be fighters, but a firm grip on it. So they're probably the common things. Some guys, there's lots of things that make them different as well. To be honest with you, I think it's a easier question to answer. There's more that separates the boys than draws them together. That's humility, the capacity to endure suffering, mental strength. Obviously, fighting someone in your undies in front of thousands of people is not, and millions of people watching, is not easy. It's got to be one of the hardest things.
It's not easy in a local town, I'll tell you that.
It's not. It's not. It's most people. What we did today could be traumatic for those young kids.
Yeah.
Like they just got their 10 mates watching it, and they've got a guy who's trained for 30 years, who's standing in front of them and goes, "Let's fight." I'm sure they were nervous.
My daughter finds it traumatic just me watching her.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
if I'm out of the room.
But how good are those things? How good are those things for character development? They're priceless. We live in in Australia, we live in a fairly comfortable society. Anything hard in my life, my capacity to endure and the suffering that's been in my life has been 100% self-imposed through martial arts, and a little bit in the military, but has been self-imposed, self-inflicted, because I had a great life, have a great life, beautiful wife, great kids, no trauma in my life, love my mum and dad.
Which ultimately gives you a preparedness for things to go pear-shaped.
It's a basis of, I'm a bit of a closet philosopher, it's a basis of, I'm big on Stoicism, Stoic philosophy, and the one of the big cornerstones which relates directly to martial arts and Stoic philosophy is the intermittent enforced or voluntary exposure to suffering, so that when the bad stuff goes wrong, you handle it better.
Yeah, 100%.
So whatever it is in the,
Yeah.
you know, whatever, and obviously martial arts, that's exactly what happens. You are, every time you get on the mat, there's a degree of, yeah, it's fun and it's enjoyable, but it's still suffering.
Yeah.
You're sweating and you've got someone laying on you that you don't want to lay on you, and certainly if you branch out into striking, you don't strike over a long period of time without at least getting a blood nose, or the odd cut, or a broken finger, or a busted knee. That's all suffering, and that for me, that has been as my physical skills wane as I get older. That is, I really hold that part of that. I don't know, would I use the word skill set? Probably not. That attribute above all else, and I regard martial arts on the highest level.
Well, for me, the word there that I chose was like, I mean, the capacity to endure. I mean, I love that. That's beautiful. But I mean, that's why we called ours Courage Training Centre.
Yeah.
Because besides building muscles and everything else, you actually just got to have a capacity to endure. Like, you need to show a little bit of courage every day and go, you know what? I'm tired, but I'm going to train anyway. I'm going to lift some weights. I'm going to punch some things. You know, I don't want to spar today, but you know what? I'm going to, because it's going to be good for me.
And that's what, if you want to be successful in life, in business, if you don't have those attributes, you're not going to succeed. And I see it in my other occupation, like my day job. A lot of young kids, and not so young, have absolutely no capacity to endure any kind of suffering or hardship.
Well,
and it's so noticeable to me.
It's actually something that I think, unfortunately, we removed from the schooling system, where instead of a capacity to endure, we focused on equity and and giving everybody a leg up for everything, rather than saying, yeah, mate, I know you're a little bit disabled, but you know what, you're going to have to work a little bit harder, because now you have to work harder than everyone to keep up. So that's how you're going to fix all your problems, is by working harder. And instead, we wanted to give everybody a leg up. So my advice to anyone who has any kind of like problem, sickness, disability is, you know what? Take a deep breath.
Push harder.
And now you're going to have to work a little bit harder than everyone else.
100%.
You know, and that's the lesson to my
100%.
kids and the kids in my class. You know what? You know what? If you're a little bit shorter than everyone else, everyone else you're going to fight to be a little bit bigger. So you know what? Maybe you got to work a little bit harder on your strength and your speed. You know, than everyone else.
Well, I tell my kids, if you put 100%, it's a bit of a samurai type of thing, I guess. If you put 100% effort into, or as best closest to 100% effort in every single thing that you do, your life will take care of itself, as a general rule.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you're going to end up doing. If you just do it the best, if you wash the dishes the best you can, when you got to do that, if you know, whatever, you do your schoolwork the best you can. When you train as hard as you can. It'll kind of the chips. Bad things can still happen, but generally life takes care of those people.
You can be upset with your performance, but at the end of the day, if you've actually given it everything that you can, you've got something to work on.
Yep.
But if you haven't, then you have to go back and now do that again with effort.
The life skills of picking yourself up and dusting yourself off are priceless. And in my life, I don't think I would have had many of those times if I didn't force martial arts training on myself. Pretty easy life.
I don't expect people to be the best even to fight in my gym.
No, it's got nothing to do with
it. They have to turn up and train, because I tell them, otherwise I've got nothing to coach you on, except for that you didn't turn up and train enough. That's the only thing I can coach you on.
I heard a good saying once, mate. Nothing good ever comes from comfortable. Nothing.
No.
If you don't, it might feel good at the time, but all true greatness and any true success comes from some degree of suffering, or not. I don't have to use the word suffering, but at least uncomfortable. If you don't make yourself uncomfortable, and that's uncomfortable.
If you didn't have to engage bravery or courage or strength or endure some kind of negative emotion, then you probably didn't deserve
100%.
what came your way.
100%.